Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And first we're going to talk about Sumy area because we have lots of very interesting details about this territory. The recent satellite pictures showing us some constructions that the Russians established and built along the main roads, logistic roads that goes from Ukrainian Sumy area to Russian Kursk region. So currently it's very difficult to understand what exactly the Russians established, but according to some military experts, these are the something like hospitals. The hospitals along the border, along the line of combat contact, to receive wounded soldiers from possible offensive operation. So this is another evidence that tell us that most likely the Russians are about to finish the preparation before further offensive operation, and that offensive in Sumy is going to be. When talking from the Ukrainian side, while the Russians are getting prepared to offensive, the Ukrainians continue collecting the dragon teeth along the roads without any use them on the ground. So this is a disaster. At least most of the Ukrainians confirms that this is disaster, that Ukrainians managed to, let's say, corrupt additional $2 billion, and most likely the Ukrainians will show no resistance on Sumy direction as well. The only resistance the Ukrainians are able to show is to stand in some buildings and towns like Sumy and many others, and most of the fields most likely will be captured by the Russians during the first days of offensive on this direction, as well as they were captured in Kharkiv area. Now let's move to Kharkiv. We have additional updates. The Russians continue clashes with Liptsy. There is a very heavy battle for this village. At least the Russians are saying that Ukrainians managed to concentrate significant number of forces inside of Liptsy itself, and the Ukrainians managed to concentrate significant number of forces in the forest that located a little bit to the southwest of this village. So a lot of thousands of Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians start counterattacks trying to force the Russians to fall back, and this is the only reason why the Russians still haven't entered Liptsy, or at least why the Russians stop publishing any updates about further Russian progress, because the Ukrainians managed to collect the critical mass. But it's just a question, it's just a matter of time, how much the Russians need time to reduce another Ukrainian group of forces till zero. We have just few geolocations of how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions in this area, and how the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian forces. Now let's move further. Let's move further to the village by the name of Staritsa. Today we got the statement from official sources of the group of forces north, and according to them, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the village. We've used this information as an official source, so that's why we have adjusted the map, and now we show two towns under complete Russian control. This is the village by the name of Bugrovatka and the village by the name of Staritsa. Most likely the Ukrainians also concentrated main part of their forces in the forest to the south of Bugrovatka and Staritsa, and obviously this is going to be a very big problem for the Russians how to move further to the south, because forest is always a very big problem. But most likely now the Russians are going to move further to the south, trying to establish complete control over the village by the name of Izbitska. So this is approximately the next Russian goal, let's say, on this direction of the Kharkiv offensive operation. Vovchansk, we haven't received anything from the northern part of the city itself, but we have additional few FPV drone strikes from the Russian side. On this video we can see another tank was damaged and destroyed as a result of FPV drone strikes, so the Russians established complete superiority and dominance in the area. And we have very interesting video from the village by the name of Shevchenkova. On this video we can see a small warehouse, let's say, between the tree line. The Russians discovered the concentration of Ukrainian forces, and as a result of Lancet strike, that concentration of forces was destroyed, and there was a very heavy explosion of ammo that Ukrainians were collecting there as well. Now let's move to the eastern flank of Vovchansk. According to information we have and according to different mappers, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, established complete control over the village by the name of Tikhaya. So now we still haven't received any geolocations confirming this. We just have different updates from very reliable mappers. So most likely these reports will be confirmed during the next few days. and the Russians reached the outskirts of the village by the name of Zybina. So the next few days the Russians will be focused on taking under control the village. Furthermore, according to different mappers, according to different information, the Ukrainians have already abandoned Zybina and moved further to the west in direction of Ovchansky Hutory. So once again, most likely the Russians will capture the village today and will force the Ukrainians to fall back. This will open the Russians the window of opportunities to move further to the east and to capture every single village that goes almost till the Russian border without any resistance from the Ukrainian side. Now let's move to Kupiansk. We continue receiving significant number of updates from the territory. The Russians published the video of how they were FPV droning the Ukrainians who were running away from Kislovka-Kotlarovka towards the, let's say, intersections of the roads, road and let's say N26 road and the railways. So the Ukrainians almost left the area, and most likely the Russians will clear the territory within the next few days. Very interesting updates are coming from Berestova. The sources reported that the Russians continue advancing on this direction. Today we start receiving the first mappers updates, first reliable mappers updates, and according to information we have, the Russians answered Berestova itself and captured the first street completely. The Ukrainians couldn't show any resistance to the Russians, and most likely during the next few days the Ukrainians will fall back from the village completely, which will also open the Russian the window of opportunities to start offensive operation further to the south with the purpose to capture the village by the name of Stelmakhovka. When talking about this area, the Russian sources reported that as a result of very heavy clashes, the Russians managed to answer the village by the name of Mesazharivka. So basically the village is about to fall. This also picture shows us the same story that we just discussed. The Russians are moving from the north to Berestova and from the east in direction to the west in direction of Mesazharivka. So most likely the Russians are trying to encircle the main Ukrainian garrison, who is currently located in the village by the name of Stelmakhovka. So very difficult situation. The Russians are pushing. The Ukrainians can show any resistance to the Russian forces. One of the most important updates are coming from Bilogorovka. We have adjusted the map because lots of reliable mappers showing us that the Russians, as a result of offensive, as we discussed in the previous update, managed to answer Bilogorovka itself and capture first buildings. Currently it's very difficult to understand what the Russians are going to do next, whether that was just a reconnaissance in force or in combat, or that was a real Russian offensive with the purpose to capture first buildings and to dig in deeper and then to move further to the west with the purpose to force the Ukrainians of 81st Air Mobile Brigade to leave this territory completely. Anyway, Bilogorovka battle, probably the final battle, has started, and during the next few days we're going to receive more updates about this. We are coming now to Chasiv direction. We have lots of very interesting updates. According to information we have, during the previous night the Russians start offensive in direction of Orekhovo-Vasilievka, and the Russians continue pushing the Ukrainians in the vicinity of Kalinovka. The sources reported that the Russians answered and captured the first buildings inside the Orekhovo-Vasilievka area, and that the Russians managed to force the Ukrainians to fall back from the first buildings of Kalinovka itself. We have few videos of FPV drone strikes on Ukrainian positions. Those were the strikes and attacks before the Russian offensive, so something like FPV drone preparation, and after they finished that, they attacked and Ukrainians were forced to fall back. Very interesting details are coming from Chasiv itself. The Russian sources reported that the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt and to capture first buildings in the eastern Chasiv, and that there are very heavy clashes right now. So the Russians, let's say, answered the final stage of the battle for the eastern Chasiv, and now they're not going to fall back anymore. They will try to reach Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass canal. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how their tank was fighting with the Russians. Video has a very poor quality, very difficult to understand, but on that video we might see the Ukrainian tank who was located on this intersection of roads in this area, and the Ukrainian tank exactly from this point was attacking the Russian forces who were attacking Chasiv. So from this direction the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians who were located in the eastern part. So most likely this is exactly what we might see. So once again, this is the tank, this is the, let's say, corner, and the Ukrainian tank was attacking in eastern direction. So something like this. Once again, this video confirms that the Russians entered the eastern Chasiv and were trying to improve their positions. The Russians just today published the video how the Ukrainians were abandoning their positions from Stupki-Golubkovsky. If you remember, most of the mappers have already updated their maps showing this territory and the complete let's say, Russian control, but just today we got the video how the last Ukrainian soldiers were running away from this territory, trying to save their lives and trying to, let's say, evacuate towards the more reliable positions. This is Seversky Donetsk Donbass canal, as you can see, it was a very good quality. A little bit on the top we can see the Seversky Donetsk Donbass canal on the ground, so the area where the canal is going on the surface, and those videos shown us how the Ukrainian personnel carrier was moving from these positions to the west in direction of canal, and then he managed to cross canal and move to the south, to the central and the southern Chasiv Yar. So something like this, most likely this area will be captured and colored in Russian today. Interesting updates are coming from Klishevka. The Russians, according to different sources, are about to finish the battle. The Ukrainians have just one place with positions, and this is the, let's say, western Klishevka. So this is the only area under Ukrainian control. The rest either in the under Russian control or in the gray zone. Avdiivka direction, we have a few updates, just regular activities on the Cheretino direction. And when talking about, let's say, Umanska and Nitailova, we got very interesting details. Different mappers have updated the maps. The Russians launched the final offensive operation on direction of Yasnobrodovka. So the Russians are about to capture. We have the videos confirming the Russian presence right on the outskirts of the village. So the Ukrainians with FPV drones were FPV droning the Russians in the vicinity of the farms. We will not watch this video due to the casualties among people, so that's why we will just show you the icon, and if you have access you can take a look. So the Russians are moving towards the farms. Most likely the farms, these barracks has been already captured by the Russians, and now most likely during the day the Russians will conduct few offensive in direction of this Yasnobrodovka as well. Nitailova, nothing during the previous night. Krasnogorovka, nothing as well. The same story, Georgievka, Novomikhailovka, Ugledar, South Donetsk. Now very interesting updates are coming from Gulay Polya. We got the map correction. The Russians established complete control over Marfapol, and this correction was made based on this video. And this is very interesting video because the Ukrainians published the video of their Baba Yaga drone with machine gun on board. So as you can see on this episode, the Ukrainian FPV drone was attacking with the bullets with just a rifle or machine gun possible Russian positions in the vicinity of Marfapol. This is new type of drone. We used to see FPV drones who just works on the basis of strikes. We have FPV drones like Baba Yaga who works on the base of FPV bomb drumming, and this is the new type that is going to work based on the machine guns attack. So very interesting. The Russians still haven't shown something like this, but as you can see, the Ukrainians start using new type of weapon. The Russians continue pushing in Rabotina after success in Rabotina itself. The Russians moving further to the west, to the north, and to the northeast. The Ukrainians tried to attack the Russians with FPV drones. Significant number of strikes were conducted by the Ukrainians during the previous days by the force of 65's mechanized brigade, and most of the locations, as you can see, are located on the northern and in the eastern, let's say, positions, which also confirms the Russian control over the territory. The Russians from their side were bombing the Ukrainians with total and tower systems, and the Russians are trying to maintain the gray zone to short the line of combat contact and to prepare the Russian forces before further movements to the north in direction of Orekhov and Nova Danilovka. Kherson direction, we haven't received anything. Crimea, the Russian sources continue publishing the videos how the helicopters were destroying the Ukrainian Navy drones. So maybe the Russians managed to find more or less solution how to destroy the drones, but as I understand, they were operating just during the, let's say, light period of time, not during the night. Very heavy explosion took place in Odessa. The Russian sources published the video of a strike with Iskander. They managed to discover the Ukrainian ammo depot that they were using for collection of Navy drones. Those Navy drones that Ukrainians were using to attack Crimea. And as a result of Iskander strike, that warehouse was completely damaged, destroyed. There was a very heavy fire, very heavy explosions, secondary detonations, and now we can see the real consequences of that attack. Very powerful attack, very successful attack from the Russian side, which will reduce obviously the Ukrainian possibilities in the future. Furthermore, let's discuss a few international updates. Ukraine asked for US help in striking targets inside Russia. The Ukrainians during the previous days were asking for a lot of missiles. They received them, but now they try to ask for satellite help to collect information about the targets on the territory of Russia, and and they ask for permission to attack them. The United States of America also gave us a few interesting details. According to information we have, Joe Biden is not going to Switzerland to take part in the Ukrainian peace negotiation initiative. If you remember, Zelensky is trying to make some meeting between countries. After this meeting, he was planning to, let's say, made an ultimatum to Russia, but now, as we can see, neither China, Russia, South Africa, and maybe United States of America are planning to visit this, let's say, meeting, which makes this meeting having no value for world and for Russia and for biggest power. Donald Trump stated that he's very afraid of, and not afraid of, he's very worried about the friendship between China and Russia, and he understands that ultimately that's what they're thinking about, hurting us. This is his statement. So Trump is also preparing for continue of confrontation and, let's say, some conflict with Russia and China. Most likely he's not going to change the policy of Joe Biden. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.